VSiN.com/subscribe.
Derek Stevens, owner, CEO of Circa Resort and Casino, Circa Sports, downtown Las Vegas, where we broadcast from every single day, coming up in about a half an hour. Survivor Strategy coming up with him. Here, more college football. Andy Staples, kind enough to give us a few minutes here on a Friday morning. You can read him, great on college football at The Athletic, and the Andy Staples Show podcast as well. Andy, thanks for the time today. How are you?
Doing good.
Okay, so I want to begin with Notre Dame in the preseason polls at number 5 in the business that we're in, sports betting, judging by other people's power ratings, professional bettors. They're all like, yeah, 5's a little bit too high. They can't put them at number 5. What was your reaction when you saw Notre Dame pop at number 5?
I'm fine with it. I mean, if Tyler Buckner's pretty good, they're probably going to be somewhere between 5 and 10. You're not going to get me too fired up about any preseason rankings because it is all just guessing. And look, Notre Dame's going to get shelled by Ohio State in the first game, and then probably going to be favored every game the rest of the way except for Clemson. So, I mean, they're going to probably wind up 10-2, and 5 through 10 sounds about right for 10-2.
Okay, that's fair enough. That's a good answer. I'm with you, honestly, because the preseason polls, the AP, and also the coaches every year, it's like, it's kind of meaningless. So that's refreshing to me to hear you say that.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I used to vote in the AP poll. I mean, the happiest day of my life was when I didn't have to do it anymore. It's all just the funny part is like, because you can get a pretty good idea probably with the first, I'd say 11, 12 teams, but then you get like 15 through 35. There's not a huge amount of difference between those teams. And so you'll get these fans that are yelling at you like, how could you have this team at 23, but you didn't have my team in the poll? I'm like, I don't know, because I don't know.
Yeah. Did you see the Manti Te'o Netflix special?
I did. I watched the first episode. I haven't seen the second. I got to say, when it all happened, I remember just thinking, what was the motivation behind any of this? And I will say, and I'm not going to spoil it for anybody, but what you learn about the person who perpetrated the hoax in episode 1, it all makes sense after that. Like the motivations become clear, and it answered my biggest question from what happened back then.
Yeah. I found it interesting that the reason Deadspin wanted to pursue the story was to make ESPN and others look bad about, hey, did you even bother to find out if this gal's actually dead?
Well, that was Deadspin's reason for being is fact checking and providing a check and balance for everybody. I was at SI at the time. I did not write the SI cover story on Te'o, but I believe it also included some Lene Kakua content.
Oh, yeah. Oh, very good. And good answer, too, as well. Do you have a sleeper? So outside maybe of the top 10, are you on the Utah bandwagon, someone that can maybe sneak in the playoff?
I don't see them sneaking in the playoff. They obviously could if they were to run the table, or even if they were 11-1. Let's say they won every game except at Oregon, and then they go avenge that in the Pac-12 title game. I think that'd be understandable. But I actually, if you're going to get a playoff team out of the Pac-12 for the first time since 2016, my guess would be Oregon. And watch that first game against Georgia. You'll probably know right away. Not necessarily if they win or not, but how do they hang against a team that has elite level talent? Because there is nobody in the Pac-12 that has anywhere near that level of talent. So the one I would say, not as a sleeper to make the playoff, because I don't really think there's a genuine sleeper to make the playoff this year. I think the teams that will make the playoff are teams that we are talking about right now. But the one that could contend maybe for a conference title, could be in the mix, could play in a conference title game, that I don't think a lot of people are talking about is Minnesota. The last really good year they had, 2019, Kirk Shiraka's running the offense. Tanner Morgan I think he averaged 10.2 yards an attempt that year. It was a very efficient year for Tanner Morgan. Mo Abraham, last time we saw him was tearing up Ohio State's defense. He got hurt in the season opener last year, but a very good running back. That's an older team. They've got to replace some stuff on the offensive line, but that is a position they've done pretty well recruiting and developing there. So I would not be shocked at all if they wind up winning the Big Ten West.
Wow. Now that would be considered a sleeper for sure. And I like it. Everything that you said, I totally agree with. We're talking to Andy Staples here from The Athletic and also the Andy Staples Show podcast. We kicked this around in the previous segment, Andy. A couple of props that are available here in Las Vegas. How about this? Bama and Georgia versus the field to win the whole thing. That's minus 120. If you want the field, you get even money.
I think that might be worth it because Ohio State, if the defense is better, will have a chance to be competitive with that type of team. Ohio State's offense is going to be off the chart great. Mm-hmm. The question is their defense better? Because their defense was bad by Ohio State standards last year and probably bad by any standard last year. And so they fire Kerry Coombs. They bring in Jim Knowles from Oklahoma State. If you've been watching Hard Knocks, Malcolm Rodriguez was the best player on Jim Knowles' Oklahoma State defense. And you can see how well he got taught how to play. So this guy has done really well at Duke, Okie State. We'll see what he can do at Ohio State, but he's never had this kind of raw material to work with. So if that defense gets even a little bit better, then they are a national title contender. If that defense is good, then they can definitely beat Alabama, Georgia, that type of team on the right day. So that's interesting. Now, I will say Clemson might be the only other one, and we'll see what happens with their quarterback situation because they've got to be better on offense for me to put them in that group. But they have a nasty defensive line, and we've seen Dabo in situations where he had an incumbent quarterback. If the job's not getting done and they really like Cade Klubnik, the freshman, DJ Uiagalelei will get benched and Cade Klubnik will come in. Or Cade Klubnik will make DJ Uiagalelei better and they'll get quality quarterback play out of DJ. Either way, Clemson would then be one of those teams I'd put in the mix.
Okay. So based on what you were saying about Ohio State, there's also another prop here in Las Vegas anyway. Will Ohio State meet Alabama in the national title game? Is plus 375. What do you think about that?
I like that one. The only thing that I would have an issue with so Alabama last year, we laugh when Nick Saban calls it a rebuilding year.
Yeah.
He's actually not lying. Last year was a rebuilding year for them. I remember seeing them at Florida in the beginning of the season, and they weren't rotating their defensive line nearly as much as they usually do. And I'm thinking, oh, he doesn't trust some of these guys yet. He hasn't found all the people that he really trusts to play. Well, as the season went on, he found them. Now, they still had some issues, like you saw after Mechie and Jameson Williams went down. The offense was not as effective. But they wind up beating Georgia in the SEC championship game. I could see a scenario like last year happening in reverse, where Georgia's replacing all these guys, but they're insanely talented. They're just young, and they get better as the season goes on, and they beat Bama in the SEC championship game, and then that screws up the seeding situation so that Bama and Ohio State might have to meet in a semi. And that's the only thing I could think would screw that up, because I do see Bama and Ohio State making the playoff. The thing that would mess it up is if they wind up having to play in a semi.
Okay. Andy Staples, our guest. 2 minutes left, Andy. I think college football needs this, that USC and Miami become top 10 teams year in, year out. How far away is that with what USC and Miami can do with the new coaches?
So USC needs to be better on both lines of scrimmage. Having good quarterback play, having good skill position players, they've had that all along. That hasn't been their problem. So Lincoln Riley needs to prove he can develop these guys on the line of scrimmage. That's hard to do in a year. Now, Mario Cristobal inherits a little better raw material at Miami. Also, they've got a quarterback in Tyler Van Dyke. I think he will get them there. He certainly built Oregon up from a talent standpoint.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
And I think it's easier to do that at Miami than it is at Oregon. So I would say that Miami probably gets there faster, but they can both definitely get there.
Yeah. Another one would be Texas.
Yep.
Right? And so
yeah.
Texas
needs that offensive line to get older, and I'm unfortunately it's not going to be able to get older this year, and so it could be maybe not 5-7 like last year, but probably not the greatest year in Austin.
Yeah, sounds fair. You can follow Andy on Twitter. He is at Andy_Staples. Read him in The Athletic, and also catch his podcast. It is called the Andy Staples Show podcast. Great stuff today, Andy. Thanks so much for the time. We appreciate that.
Thank you, guys.
Yep, be good. That was a good note, by the way. He said Oregon.
Yes.
I don't want that to slide under the radar. Because if you look at that, if he's right, like what's that eyeball test look like when they take on Georgia?
That's very important.
Because
that's a good point.
There's
Do
not
they get blown out?
Yeah, there's not enough. What if they hang tight, though? Because there isn't another team in the Pac-12 that will be close to Georgia.
Yeah, that also determines, Utah's fate if that happens. Well, who's your big win? Well, what happened? And then I love the Minnesota pick.
Oh, that's what you're looking for with a sleeper, for sure. Do You Concur is up next. We need to revisit a very popular question from a month ago, or a couple of months ago, actually, and I was laughed at, mocked, and ridiculed. We'll play that audio coming up next.
Visit VSiN.com to get current odds, listen for free, find showtimes, and download VSiN sports betting podcasts.